I had the pleasure of meeting my fellow storytellers this evening, and so it's only by coincidence that both my story and Peter's story revolve around swimming. I love to swim. I had the good fortune to be raised in a small town on the North Shore of Boston, Beverly, Massachusetts.
Yay.
And unlike Cape Cod with its long expanses of beaches, the beaches on the North Shore are a lot of rocky inlets, little coves, but it was a delightful place to spend a summer day. At low tide, we would slip on the rocks, on the seaweed, look for barnacles, hermit crabs, mussels. At high tide, there was a pier at the time, and we were all daredevils, flinging ourselves off the diving board in a whole array of jackknives and forward flips and backward flips and cannonballs and belly flops. The water range was, as a rule, about 60 degrees, but that didn't hold us back. Nobody had air conditioning, and if you got too cold, you just went and rolled in the sand. So we went to the beach every day in the summer, and my mother insisted that we all take the whole series of Red Cross swimming lessons. So I started at beginner and proceeded through all the levels until I passed the lifeguard test and the water safety instructor test, which was great because that meant that I could come back to the beach during high school and college and be paid as a lifeguard and to teach swimming lessons. Now back then, women's sports were much different. It was the very beginnings of Title IX. So for instance, my high school boasted a big modern field house with an indoor track, plenty of spaces for field events for the boys. There were varsity and junior varsity teams for the boys. The girls were allowed to come down and do laps before the boys practiced. And you could record them, and if you accumulated 25 miles on the honor system, you would get a certificate of participation. Of course I got the certificate. So I headed off to college, Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and the situation was somewhat similar. They had an excellent men's rowing team, crew program, with a boathouse about 20 minutes away from the college. And only begrudgingly had the varsity men's coach decided he had to let the damn women in the boathouse, but only in the fall, and they could only use the boats that the men didn't want to use. Now, I'd found out about rowing from two of my hallmates freshman year. They had gone out for crew. I went out to watch them, and I was just fascinated. I mean, to be on the water, those boats were so beautiful, the way they glided. I liked the idea of being part of a team. I liked the idea of competing. So I went home that summer, determined to be fit enough to try out for the crew. And I was in a great position to do this because every day I would ride my Raleigh record 10 speed back and forth to the beach, 6 miles each way. I would teach swimming lessons during the day. Then at lunchtime I would run the length of the beach and back, which was about 3 miles or so, teach some more lessons, and then for fun I would swim a quarter of a mile after work. Those were the days. Across from the beach, about a mile away, you could across the water, you could see several small islands, 2 of which were the Misery Islands, Great Misery and Little Misery. Apparently they'd gotten these names because someone had been marooned many years before. Subsequently, I understand that there was a casino there and private homes, but it all burned down. So the only thing you could get there now was poison ivy. That summer, someone got the idea that there should be a race from Misery back to West Beach. And pretty soon, I was considered to be the odds-on favorite because it was a small town and everyone saw me swimming every day. Now, in order to race, you had to have a team of spotters. And my only choice for my team was my father, who was in his late 50s, could row a boat. My brother, who was 13, and profound attention deficit before those things were diagnosed. And as for the boat, we had a small aluminum rowboat that my father had assembled from a Sears Roebuck kit that he had ordered. And I can still see the pieces of aluminum scattered in the backyard. And I do remember these pristine white styrofoam blocks that went under the seats. My father wasn't particularly patient or handy, so I'm not sure all the screws went exactly where they were supposed to, and there was an awful lot of caulking in the boat. We had taken the boat out to a pond nearby to fish, and someone had to be designated to bail because it leaked. But this was all I had. So the day of the race came, and my mother decided she didn't want to watch. And my father grumpily got the boat in the car, and we just all made it to the beach. We made it got the boat in the water, rowed in silence across to Misery, and I slid into the water and turned, and in all honesty, the island looked about the same close up as it did from far away, and I really believed all that was there was poison ivy. So I took a look around at my competition, and they were all familiar faces because it was about a mile's distance, and you really did need to be in shape. So I don't remember whether it was a starter's pistol or a flag or someone yelled, "Go!" and we were off. And I quickly took the lead. I was doing the breaststroke so I could see the veranda clearly across the way. And I'd gone about 1,000 yards when suddenly it occurred to me, not only were there no competitors close by, there was no boat to spot me close by. Now, in looking back, someone else could have taken care of my father, and if I started to go under, people had power boats. They would have noticed. But it never occurred to me to finish the race that I'd worked so hard for. Instead, I looked back, and I could see my father yelling at my brother, and he was trying to bail the best he could. So I turned around, and I swam back to them to calm down my father and to help my brother bail. So much later, we got back to the beach. The race was over. Someone else had won. My parents never brought the race up again. And in the fall, when I went back to school, I went out for crew. It was very demanding. I don't know if any of you have ever tried it, but it's not just coordinating your arms and your legs, but it's making sure that oar goes through the water the way it should. And while learning the sport, there were 7 other novices in the boat. But we did come together as a team, and I really enjoyed the sport and rowed in regattas that year and the next fall and the following fall. When I called home and tried to talk to my parents about how excited I was about crew, and mind you, this was a weekly toll call, for those of you in the audience who remember what a toll call meant. If I talked about crew, they'd just quickly change the subject to my brother's track and field, whatever. That all changed my senior year when I was elected the captain of the crew. All of a sudden, my father wanted to know everything about rowing, and he even arranged for me to be interviewed by the sports editor of our local newspaper, the Beverly Times. After I graduated, I moved to Manhattan and had no time and no place to row as I started graduate school and working. Nowadays, I row at the gym and I swim at the gym. But there's one other thing. Now I choose to swim from misery, not towards it.